Well, howdy, and welcome back once again. I don't know what I'm going to call this new program yet, but let's just call it maybe some common sense, because that's eventually what I'm going to lead around to on this, is common sense. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Florida. Now, I'm in a jacket because it's also a cold, beautiful sunny day here in Florida. Let's talk about diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I was diagnosed in 2001. So I've been fighting this thing for about 20 years now, or allegedly fighting it. When my first doctor, the doctor that diagnosed the diabetes, first thing he did was put me on glucotrol, which is, of course, the same class of drugs as, it's a sulfonylurea, same class of drugs as glimepiride or glipizide. And what it does is, what a sulfonylurea does is it kind of forces your pancreas to produce more insulin as needed. Back then, we didn't really know much about the keto diet, or I should say, as Dr. Ken Berry would put it, the proper human diet. Low carb, high fat. I was somewhat overweight back then. I'm working on that now. But back in the day, you know, I just went my happy-go-lucky way. He said, yeah, you can eat a cheeseburger, just don't eat the bread around it. I said, what? How am I supposed to hang on to that cheeseburger if it hasn't got a bun on it? He said, don't eat the French fries. What am I supposed to have on the side? I went my happy-go-lucky way, and of course, the diabetes kept getting worse. My A1Cs kept creeping up. And, of course, they'd have a fit about it. You know, I didn't know what to do. Not one of these doctors told me, you know, cut out the carbohydrates altogether and go low carb, high fat. You know, they just kept prescribing drugs. Eventually, he increased to the limit, I might add, my glucotrol, which, when I ended up with a job at Sam's Club and had insurance all of a sudden, then I was able to get, we started, you know, getting our scripts through Sam's Club instead of Walgreens. And they put me right on glipizide. You know, the script was for glucotrol XL5. Well, they put me on glipizide. I was on that for a few years, and then they changed that up, and I was on glimepiride. Well, in there somewhere, the doctor that diagnosed my diabetes had also put me on metformin. So here I was on two drugs, two 1,000 unit pills, or two 1,000. Yeah, I guess it's 1,000 units or milligrams of metformin twice a day, and about 15 milligrams of glimepiride, i.e. glucotrol XL5. So, I went my happy-go-lucky way. The doctor I've got now, I mean, about 6-7 years ago, he put me on insulin. You know, he's trying to bring down, these doctors, they're trying to bring down your trying to bring down your blood sugar levels and your A1C, and they're not understanding that the worst thing you can do is be putting your patients on more drugs. Okay, I'm back. As I was saying before I was interrupted by actually having to work, my doctor had put me on insulin about 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. I don't know how long I'd actually been on it. But as is the typical scenario, you know, as with most people that are put on insulin, especially type 2 diabetics, the need for insulin keeps going up and up and up. It seemed like every time I go to the doctor's office, I mean, and that was from the very start. I'd go in 3 months after he put me on. He had me on 20 units a day. Then they suddenly wanted me to work up to 25, and then 30, and then 35, and then 40. Within a couple of years, they had me up to 90 units a day of insulin, and my A1C still wasn't stabilizing. It still was creeping up, and I didn't really know what to do. Well, a few years ago, that year that that coronavirus flu shot didn't work, you know, that the year the vaccine was really not any good, I got the flu. I got sick. I was having to work through that sickness. I was still working at a power plant, and they had us on nights during the shutdown, and those were 12-hour shifts. And thank goodness they you know, the nights I was working, they only had me working as a hole watch instead of instead of actually working inside the boiler. I was not feeling good, but I was able to at least do the hole watch duties. Keep the guys inside safe. But I wasn't eating. I couldn't eat. I didn't dare eat, or I would have been sick and down in the restroom constantly. And, you know, when you're doing a hole watch, you cannot leave. So, when I, you know, suddenly my blood sugars dropped. In fact, the PA at my doctor's office, the one he had at the time, she even said that, you know, she was totally shocked at the low numbers I was showing her on the on my blood, you know, my blood sugar meter. In fact, she was the one that actually inspired me to actually put that blood glucose meter to actual use. So as Dennis Pollock would put it, you know, it's Mike the meter is my best friend. So I took and, you know, I started experimenting a little. But after I got past the flu that time, you know, that coronavirus, the flu is a coronavirus, so is the common cold, in case anybody's wondering. But we're not going to talk about the plandemic. We'll talk about another pandemic, though, that's going on right now. But once I got past the flu, I went back to eating like I had always eaten, which is the standard American diet. Cheeseburgers with the bun, French fries, baked potatoes with my steak, plenty of bread. You know, everything that I'm not supposed to have as a diabetic. I was enjoying it all. Well, you know, my blood sugar crept back, my A1C, my HbE, my hemoglobin, it crept back up. And you know, the doctor said, do something. You know, since I don't have health insurance, my doctor is kind of a a jerk anyway. And so I took and went again my happy-go-lucky way for about a month and a half. It was about 3 months till the next appointment. So they told me to do something. Well, I went and did something. See, about a year earlier, my blood glucose was down to 7.1. Well, he seemed to be very happy with that. Well, by the time it reached that point, it was back up to 8.5. And I needed to bring that A1C down. I had to figure out, how do I do that? So I started watching videos on YouTube. I just did a search for it one day, and I found Dennis Pollock's Beat Diabetes channel. Then I noticed there was a TED Talks. Dr. Sarah Hallberg was on the very first TED Talks I watched. Wow, that's interesting. And they were talking about this low-carb, high-fat diet. And so I thought, well, maybe I should give that a try. And I did. And to my surprise, I went, and there was nothing on my script from the doctor to take to the lab for the HbA1c, so I went ahead and went in and had an HbA1c done anyway, which I can, in Florida, I don't know if you can do that in every state, but in Florida, there's certain tests you can have done. You don't have to have a prescription to do them. So I went to the lab and I paid my 20 bucks. It's normally 40 bucks at that lab, but since I went in on a Wednesday, they do everything half price on Wednesday. This is a decent lab. That's why I go to that lab. I have all my work done at that lab. Physician Stat Labs, for those of you who live in Florida. Anyway, my blood sugar, or my hemoglobin A1C was down to 6.9. Now that's probably the first time in years it had been below 7. Below 7. I'm thinking, well, now that's encouraging. And that was after a month and a half of following the keto diet. Or about a month and a half of just going low carb, high fat. I was very happy with that. So, as it turned out, I wasn't unhappy with the results of low carb, high fat. It encouraged me. I said, so let's keep this up. Let's see where it goes. Well, when I went into the doctor's office with that 6.98 HbA1c, all I got was yelled at for not having the other tests done because I didn't have the money to have the other tests done. And he just bitched to high heaven about it, and then he said, I can't control what the lab charges, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I can't either. Then, he just got too damn concerned about money, and, well, needless to say, I think I'm going to find another doctor. I have other things I can tell you about this doctor. I'm not going to give his name. At one time he was a very good doctor, but, I don't care how badly his back is hurt. That's no reason to treat your patients like they're garbage. I felt like I was treated like garbage, and that day started me off I was started off on a high note because my HbA1c was low. It was below 7, for goodness sake. It was below 7. It was at 6.9. I thought, that's the greatest thing in the world. This guy treated me like crap. The guy who put me on the insulin 5 or 6 years earlier. Needless to say, I've not been happy with him since. However, it's one of those things I can do nothing about. Nothing at all. Well, I think I've talked enough for today. So I'm going to say bye for now. I'm out of here.